Welcome to the sexual miseducation of Black men in America. I'm your host, A.B. Bracewell, and I want to welcome all the brothers, and I want you to take this journey with me. I want you to journey with me through the psychological, the emotional, the relational, and the spiritual impact that some of the unhealthy and toxic lessons that we learned about sex and women has on us as Black men. I don't only want us to take this journey to explore, but I also want us to break cycles. I want us to break cycles for the next generation of kings. I want them to learn the proper way to manage and measure their manhood. And I want them to understand that their manhood is not measured by the amount of women they sleep with or how well they perform in bed, but is measured by the qualities that are inside of us. Tonight's topic is why Black men can't be her friend. Why Black men can't be her friend. Before I even get deep into the topic, I want to share this clip with you real quickly, and then we can discuss.
All of my friends are men. I don't have female friends. I don't. I'm incapable of that.
Why?
Well, because come on.
Because you have a wife.
Well, I have a wife, and I don't really have female friends because look. Okay, let's get rid of this.
I want to know why.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you this. Let's get rid of this right here. You're an attractive woman. There's some guy somewhere saying, "Yeah, we're friends." No, that's not true. He's your friend only because you have made it absolutely clear that nothing else is happening except this friendship we have. We remain your friends in hopes that one day there'll be a crack in the door, a chink in the armor, and trust and believe that guy that you think is just your buddy, he will slide in that crack the moment he gets the opportunity.
And you
Because
think
we're
most men
guys.
think this way?
99.9% of us think that. And you tell this to a woman, it just blows her back. No, I have male friends. You have male friends because they know it could be nothing else right now. I tell you, all your male friends, just ask them in a friendly way. If I wanted to date you, would you be okay with that? And watch the fireworks. Watch.
So that's an old clip from Steve Harvey. Some of you probably seen it before, I'm not sure, but he's
So in a couple
speaking
weeks, I'll be moving to California.
directly
I have a friend from high school who's kind
to
of
the topic of tonight. He's speaking directly to the topic that I wanted to discuss tonight. Why Black men can't be her friend. Now, I know you've probably been in conversations like this before, how men and women can't be friends. A lot of the time, the conversation is very surface level, don't really go too deep. We just say men and women can't be friends. But tonight, I wanted to go a little deeper. I want to talk about the social learning that Black men go through that prevents us from developing friendships with women. I want to talk about the psychosexual development of Black boys that also prevents us from developing platonic friendships with women. I want to talk about the conditioning, the messages that we receive about sex. I want to talk about the influences from our environment. And I specifically want to talk about the programming that stops us from developing friendships and a programming that starts us in seeing women as sexual objects. That's a major one. So before we even get into the topic, before we get too deep, I want to define what they say friendships are, or friend is. This is a friend is a person that's attached to another by feelings of affection or personal regard. A friend is a person who is on good terms with another. Is a person that is not hostile. Now, in order to develop friendships, two things are needed. Two very important things. There's trust and vulnerability. A person needs to be able to trust another person. And a person also needs to be safe enough or feel safe enough to put down their guards where they can be vulnerable. and trust and vulnerability are two things that Black boys, Black men are taught not to be, especially when it comes to women, especially when it comes to women. Now, why are we often taught not to be trusting and be vulnerable? Because there's a lot of emotion that goes hand in hand with trust and vulnerability that are not seen as masculine and not seen as manly, that guys are really pushed away from in order to be trusting and be vulnerable. You have to have some level of sensitivity. You have to be caring. You have to be empathetic. You have to show some concern. And you have to be able to let your guard down. And those things we're taught not to be. Now, there's some very legitimate reasons why some Black boys in certain environments are taught not to be that way or taught to have our guard up. A lot of us grew up in violence. A lot of us grew up in environments where there's a lot of crime and a lot of danger. So the man that shows any level of sensitivity, any level of caring, any level of concern can possibly become victimized. So we're taught to become callous. We're taught to be hard. We're taught to walk around on the defense with our guard up. The problem is that's not only used as a defense mechanism against danger, it often spills over into our relationships, especially our relationships with women. In certain lessons that we learn as Black boys, as young men, that reinforces that no trust, no vulnerability stance that we that we take. Now, I can talk about my environment and the lessons I was taught, lessons I learned growing up, and how it affected my ability to develop strong relationships, platonic relationships with women. Maybe you can relate, maybe you can't, or maybe you was taught your own lessons that prevent you from being friends with women. But a major lesson that was taught to me and my friends and guys in my environment about women that reinforced that no friendship zone thing was that women are gold diggers. We was taught that. We was taught that women are after your money, women are after your possessions, and women are after your status if you had it. So you can imagine how that reinforces that that fight against trusting. We was taught not to trust. And we was not only taught not to trust, it was reinforced with lessons like that. We was also taught that women could be bought or sold sexually for the right price. So a young man that's taught that about women is not going to become vulnerable. He's not going to trust her because she feels like he feels, or he understands, or he believes that she has a price, that there's no loyalty there, that any guy or any person that comes with the right price, that she'll go to him. These are lessons that we are taught as young Black men about women and about sex. Women were portrayed as sluts, as whores, as being very loose. So it always learned lessons that put them in a negative light. And we was also taught that a woman's sexual value was the most important value that she brought to the table. So automatically we started to objectify her. We didn't see her as someone that can be a potential friend. We seen her as someone that can be a sexual encounter. And these lessons, there was direct, some of them was indirect. It was taught by family, it was taught by friends, it was taught by movies, it was definitely taught that by the music we listened to. This was the message of the day growing up. So you can only imagine how these messages being indoctrinated in a man's or a boy's mind can affect his ability to want to develop friendships with a woman. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. It didn't stop there. What was so funny is that there were certain boys or certain young men that had friends, female friends, platonic friends. And for the most part, that guy's sexuality will actually be questioned. Just because he was a platonic friend with a girl, just because he hung out and there was no ulterior motive, it was unimaginable to us that you can just be friends with a girl, or why would you want to just be friends with a girl? Without wanting to sleep with her, you didn't like her, you didn't like the friends, he wasn't using her to get to the friends or anything, then his sexuality was questioned. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. These are the things that we thought, and these are some of the conditionings and grooming that we received as young men, which gets in the way of us developing friendship with young women. You see, Steve Harvey had it right in saying that he have no female friends, but he didn't go into why he don't have female friends. There's always a why, there's always a reason behind it. And so you can just imagine the psychological, the emotional, the behavioral programming that we went through and how that stopped us from developing friendships with a woman, and how it also started us in seeing women as sexual objects. But as I said, that was just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the beginning. It gets a lot deeper than that. There's some social and there's some psychosexual development that we go through as Black men that also affect our ability to become friends with women. I can start all the way back to when we're born. Of course, early on, the ages of 1 and 2, we're oblivious to sex or gender or anything of that kind. There's no awareness of the differences. But when we hit about 3, 4, 5, we start to understand some of those differences. We start to point them out. We start to understand that, boys have short hair, girls have long hair, or this is a boy's toy and this is a girl's toy, or boys wear pants and girls wear dresses. A big thing that we always say when we're young boys, when we get something that we think isn't for the appropriate gender, we'll say, hey, that's for girls. But even though we understand and we start to see differences between the genders, it's not seen as a bad thing. It's not seen as a negative thing. It's not seen as opposition during that stage of life. But as we grow and develop, and I would say between the ages of maybe 6 to 10, things start to change. Those differences start to become a little bit more defined. And this is at this age, this early, that I always say that young Black boys need to start to be taught the non-sexual value of women or of girls, their female counterparts. Before this time, before we hit puberty, we have to understand that girls have some non-sexual value. Before those hormones start to shift and hit it to high gear, we need to learn these things. We need to teach these things to our boys. But what usually happens during this stage? During this stage, at least for me, when I was growing up, boys and girls were mainly segregated. We was mainly separated. In school, we walked on 2 different lines. During the lunchtime, we sat at 2 different tables. In our seating, we was kind of separate from the girls. Whenever there was a competition, it was boys against girls. Whenever it was compared, it was boys against girls. See, so the boys, we were kind of conditioned to look at girls as different and to look at girls as the adversary. We was even kind of conditioned to look at girls as being gross during this time. But then all of a sudden, around the age of 12 or 13, maybe 14, we hit puberty. It's this sudden change in perception. The young ladies that we was just looking at and calling gross and being disgusted by, now we are attracted to. And we see them as somebody that we can have sex with. Before this time, we were not taught how to talk to girls. We were not taught about the things we have in common with girls. We were not taught how to socialize and interact with girls. We were taught nothing about them, nothing positive anyway. We were taught all those other lessons that I talked about earlier, the negative lessons. So you can only imagine if you can combine that level of ignorance, that level of miseducation and misunderstanding with this newfound hormones or shift in sexual attraction. You can understand and see how a young Black man that's misled into sex becomes a man that's misplaced once he start having sex. He never learned, he never developed the skills on how to become friends with her. It went straight from she's gross to she's someone I can have sex with. I'm going to reiterate this. We do not learn the non-sexual value of girls growing up. We do not learn about our shared interests. We're made to compete. We're compared to each other. And at the same time, we're learning a lot of negative things through the media, through the boys on the block, family members, through the examples that we see. We're learning a lot of negative things about girls and women. So you can see how a guy can become a grown man and he doesn't even know how to be friends with a young lady because he only sees her as a sexual object. He doesn't know how to talk to her, doesn't know how to interact with her, doesn't know how to socialize with her. You see, our sexual miseducation plays a huge part. It's a huge contribution to our inability to develop friendships with women. Boys that never learn how to be friends with women or girls will one day have children with them. And what do you think is going to happen when they start having children with someone they don't even know how to be friends with? Boys that never learn how to be friends with young ladies or girls begin to have sex with them one day, but they never learn how to be intimate with them. When we don't learn how to develop friendships with women, we never learn how to develop relationships. And when we don't know how to develop relationships, we don't know how to develop families. And if we can't develop a family, how can we raise the next king to lead the community? What's going to happen to our community? So early on, we have to start teaching our boys some very important lessons. We have to start teaching them the non-sexual value of women. We have to start showing them that there is some shared interests between boys and girls. We have to stop making them compete, and we have to start teaching them how to be cooperative with each other. We have to stop comparing them, and we have to teach them that they can complement each other. Only this will help them to develop the skills, it'll help them develop the ability, and it'll help them to develop the desire to be friends with women. This is the sexual miseducation of Black men in America. Share, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment. I'll make sure to get back to you.